And so to one of Grand Prix racing's great street circuits, the notorious downtown Detroit track, manhole covers and all. In 1989 it was due to move from downtown over to a small island of Belle Isle. That was halted for environmental reasons, and since the old venue could not conform to FISA pit regulations, it's off the calendar. That's sad for many of the fans, and amongst them a massive and loyal North American following, who will still shout for Mansell and our nukes. They're really neat, man. Although we all suspect the bud and barbecues will still remain #1 priority. Many of the fans flocked in to see the Ferraris. Gerhard Berger and Michele Alboreto seemed to find more speed at Detroit, finishing second and third in the time charts. Yes, they found some more power from the engine, but the Italian press would have us believe the newfound form was spiritual, the Pope having visited the Ferrari factory very recently.
Nelson Piquet seemed in slightly better spirits after his 4th place in Canada, but even so, he couldn't summon much confidence for this race.
Well, still in one piece. I think it's a fantastic weekend. Well, we had some problem to set up the car, but so far everything is going all right.
What about for the race? What's the major factor going to be?
To finish. And very good finish here. The circuit's breaking down. Very good for the tires. It'll be a very hard race.
Andrew de Cesaris and the Real team were disappointed to run out of fuel in Canada in their neat Gustav Brunner design car, but Andrea thought Detroit should provide better luck.
To score the point with this car, with a normal engine, you have be able to finish first all the race, and then when you have the opportunity, you get the points. So now Detroit, I thought, would be a place where I can get points, but we are not so competitive here. We see this afternoon now.
Making a welcome return to Grand Prix racing was Pierluigi Martini, replacing the retired Spaniard Adrian Campos in the Minardi team. However, Pierluigi would still have to drive Formula 3000 when Grand Prix didn't clash. Dr. Jonathan Palmer was still trying to make the good-looking yet ineffective Tyrrell work properly, but Tyrrell, and in particular Palmer, have an enviable street track record.
Well, they've certainly been quite kind to me in the past couple of years. 2 5th places at Monaco, and of course the 4th in Adelaide last year. At the moment, I just hope we can do well enough here in Detroit, both in qualifying and the race, to justify perhaps that reputation.
Do you think there's a possibility of points here as well?
I think so, yeah. There are going to be a lot of people out here who all think they're going to finish 4th, 5th and 6th behind, say, a couple of McLarens and the Ferrari. And, you know, people like Streff, Mansell, Boutsen, you know, myself, a lot of us think we couldn't be there. Some of us are going to end up broken down, some of us are going to end up nudging the wall, and some of the others will be. I don't know. It's difficult to say, but that's certainly what we're aiming for.
Stefano Modena had a big accident at Detroit during practice, which caused him to be detained in the hospital overnight. The Italian still managed to make the race next day, though. But Ivan Capelli would not make the race following his collision in the March with the tough Detroit walls. He cracked a bone in his foot, but he still hobbled in to watch the race as a spectator. Nakajima failed to qualify for Detroit. The Japanese confessed to being disorientated by the lines of concrete walls.
Round 6 of the Formula 1 World Championship, and here in Detroit, Senna is his 6th pole position, but Prost down in 4th position, and the Ferraris 2nd and 3rd in practice, and Berger goes immediately into 2nd place behind Senna at this very tough Detroit track. And you saw Derek Warwick locking up brakes there, and there is Boutsen pulling out, going inside Prost and taking 4th place away from him. In-car shot from Mauricio Gugelmin's March. Great shot, Sterling.
It really lets you know why he's worried about those strips of concrete either side. It's very, very small. Not like this when I race, I tell you, the curbstones, but that's another thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you can also see where they patched up the track, where it started breaking up during practice. Nonetheless, Senna forging ahead. Behind him, Berger, car 28. Behind him, Alboreto. Then Boutsen, then Prost, then Nannini. And as the cars go back onto the waterfront to finish the first lap, Prost starts to make his move, goes inside Boutsen and retakes that 4th place that he lost earlier. So Prost, at a track he really hates, worked ever so hard. Sterling, I think watching his progress, you're full of admiration for the Frenchman.
I think here he had a particular job because apart from the problem of passing other cars, if you have a mental block about a corner or a course like this, it's something very, very difficult to overcome.
And this was a problem here. Berger was slowing down. He had a puncture on the left rear, and Boutsen had got past him, Alboreto had got past him, and Nannini was closing in on him, about to gobble him up. Berger was not to get too much further. In fact, he parked here at the side of the track, and that was the end of the Detroit Grand Prix for the Austrian driver. The Ferrari was out, couldn't get any further. Here was Nannini closing in on Alboreto. And Nannini's pushing hard now as they come past a back marker, one of the Eurobruns, and Nannini went down the inside of Alboreto and touched the rear wheels and punted the Ferrari off, just as Alboreto had punted Mansell off at Monte Carlo earlier. And Mansell had a great view of that behind, so he must have thought that's great justice. Meantime, Gugelmin closes in on Piquet, and he's going to go past the world champion. I think he's got problems, Sterling.
He must have, otherwise he'd be going quicker than that, or he turns his boost down. He's worried about fuel or something.
And Martini and Caffey closing in on the 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet. And they're going past as well, so Nelson Piquet is dropping down the order. Martini ahead of the Lotus. And Caffey soon to go past. There he is, past Nelson Piquet. And a really great drive from Mauricio Gugelmin here in the camera car in his first season of Grand Prix racing. And there's Nigel Mansell out. That means he retired from every Grand Prix up to this stage in the season.
There's Gugelmin, who's just been lapped by his friend Ayrton Senna, pulling away. You can see the sort of extra performance he's got with that McLaren, actually.
Yeah, Senna really pulling away, and he really has pulled everything out of the bag. That's Patrese. He retired as well, pushing the Williams jet to the side. And Nelson Piquet had problems. He spun off and could not restart the Lotus Honda. And poor old Derek Warwick crashed into the barriers and knocked the front left wheel off his Arrows Megatron. So that was his race run as well.
That gives you a good example again of what it's like going down that tube, that concrete tube. Very, very off-putting.
And at this point in the race, Mauricio Gugelmin had problems with the March's engine. It expired, and that was the end of his event and the end of our camera. Meantime, leader Senna into the pits for fresh tyres. He still managed to keep the lead, but the American marshal was more concerned about keeping our camera out of the way. Ron Dennis holds the lollipop up and out. Senna rejoins the race, still in the lead. Fantastic performance from the young Brazilian.
Here's Senna rejoining the circuit. He's got to warm his tyres up, of course, before he can really get let rip. And there are the fans that follow him around from race to race. They're absolutely wild with ecstasy at him being in the lead after that stop.
And Julian Bailey had a great race, but he ended it in the unyielding Detroit walls as Ayrton Senna went on to victory on his very last lap, and very, very slowly. He's nursing the car to the finish, very short of fuel, and Thierry Boutsen in third place, staying behind Ayrton Senna as he manages a quick wave to the photographers on his way to the checkered flag and victory in the Detroit Grand Prix. And Prost finished in second place, although over half a minute behind winner Ayrton Senna, whose fans cheered him on here, and he'd won this race twice. In fourth place, making up for his disappointment in Canada, where he ran out of fuel, was Andrea De Cesaris in the Real Ford. And fifth was Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell, and he'd threatened to do well at a street circuit. But the major celebrations were all around the Minardi team, where Pierluigi Martini got his first point for the team on his return to Grand Prix racing.